So you got a log splitter with a blown motor. Here's a couple options for fixing it. If you're like me and you have a tractor, first option you might think about is just plumbing it up to the hydraulics, which seems simple enough. A couple of quick connects and you plumb up to the existing hydraulics of the log splitter. Should be easy. The only thing guys will tell you is that there's a little lever back here that you'll have to bungee cord or something down to keep the hydraulics flowing through the tractor. The problem with that is that there's low hydraulic flow with this tractor. It's about 6.5 gallons per minute, when a log splitter this size is used to seeing somewhere around 13 to 16 gallons per minute, which would dramatically reduce the speed of which the cylinder is going to go up and down splitting your logs. So for the hydraulic flow that you're going to need to run off of a tractor, you might think, well, I'll just hook up a hydraulic pump to the PTO and plumb that to the hydraulics on the log splitter, which is fine, except just the cost. Hooking those motors up anywhere from several $100s. $500 is fair price I've seen for some that has the kind of gallons per minute flow that the log splitter requires. So unless you just have one of those lying around, it's not necessarily cost effective. You might think, I'll just hook up a PTO driven motor. That's simple enough. A motor for the PTO and a PTO shaft like you have on a lawn mowing implement. But then you have the motor cost as well and the shaft cost. You could reuse the shaft off another implement if you have one, but it's just extra cost. So the option that I went with was just a replacement motor. Now, the cheapest way to do a replacement motor is off of an old push mower. You can typically find push mowers very cheap or free on the side of the road. They're just a small engine, simple to get running, and just slap one of those onto your old log splitter. But Harbor Freight sells this Predator engine, which is super easy out of the box. You fill it with oil, you fill it with gas, you bolt it up, you pull it, it runs. Old push mowers, just a non-self-propelled thing, just the cheapest one you can. I got this one free. Like I said, pretty easy to find. I see them on Craigslist all the time for less than $40. But you would just unbolt this motor, put it on your log splitter. The only thing is your shaft size difference. So whatever key you have to spin the hydraulic pump on the log splitter, you're just going to have to match to the shaft of the motor. And they sell sleeve adapters, which are $12, $15 online, easy enough to get. Or if you have a lathe, even simpler, you just cut your own to fit. For me, the Harbor Freight is a 7/8 of an inch shaft versus my log splitter, which required a 1 inch. So I just had a 7/8 to 1 inch sleeve adapter, and it bolts right up. So for the money, I think it's very difficult to try and beat these Harbor Freight engines. $125 and is out the box, almost ready to go. You just add some 5W or 10W30 oil, add your gasoline, and pull the start. And you're getting quite a bit for $125 out of these motors. A lot nicer than what was on my old push mower. For example, you can see there that the exhaust, the muffler is caged, kind of protect you, or especially on a wood splitter, you got a lot of the wood chips flying around. One of the things with these motors is that they don't come with mounting bolts. Now, the mounting bolts that I had for the motor that was on the log splitter doesn't work with this motor, nor did my push mower bolts work with this log splitter. So what I ended up doing is just getting some extra hardware that runs all the way through, and there's a nut on the back end tightening it, holding it down in place. The bolt holes aren't threaded. You can run a tap through them and thread them that way. They're just smooth bore, so I was just able to run bolts through there. Another thing to think about with these motors is that they're designed to go back onto a push style lawnmower. So you have a throttle cable that's supposed to be hooked up to this little guy, and then you have the stop kill engine switch that's supposed to be hooked up to this guy. For me, right now, temporarily, I'm just running the clamps off of them, but I'm gonna have to rig something up to where I can pull both of those remotely. So here's that detent lever I was talking about, runs your rear hydraulics. Simple, quick disconnect hose. You can plumb up different implements, and that's nice running on the tractor, but for the log splitter, you'd have to make sure this is held down all the time for constant flow. And I've heard from some tractor salesmen that the hydraulics can actually get pretty hot if you were to run this constantly down, depending on how many logs you have to split. Another thing to consider. Now, here's the PTO of my tractor. I've seen guys run those PTO driven hydraulic motors and they've just wedged the whole thing directly onto the PTO, and then it'll have two hoses coming off of it and you'll plumb it to the log splitter. For mine, this shield might actually have been a problem, so it probably would have been better for me to mount the whole motor on the log splitter and then just have a PTO shaft still from the PTO to the PTO hydraulic pump, and then that would all be plumbed in. Kind of the same thing as a PTO driven motor. It's just whether you're using a motor to turn the hydraulic pump on the log splitter, or you're using the hydraulic pump and you're using the PTO to turn it to move the log splitter. For reference, here is one of those keyed shaft adapters. This one, I mistakenly ordered a 3/4 to 1 inch. So it's 3/4 interior, 1 inch exterior diameter with a little key slides into the keyed shaft on your motor. Due to cost overall, I went with the Harbor Freight motor, even though it's one more motor to maintain was kind of my initial idea of using the tractor, just not cost effective to me. Considering this log splitter new is a little over $1,000, $125 replacement motor just seemed like a good deal, considering $500 some to get it plumbed up to my tractor one way or another, and then it running slower or possibly at the same speed, but then it kind of ties up your tractor as well while you're just trying to use something like a log splitter. Still yet, another option is you can give up all this life of gasoline and diesel engines, PTO driven anything, and get yourself a $250 electric log splitter. Only two considerations on those for me. First consideration was that this is, I want to say, a 25-ton log splitter. Those electric log splitters are 5-ton, to give you a power comparison. I have not come across anything that I've slid under here that this wouldn't push into. The other thing is that it's a large electric motor. I thought electric log splitter would be quieter. It has a high-pitched electric whine, kind of reminds me of a forklift or a lift for a car, like a 2 or 4 post car lift. It actually sounds exactly like that going, that kind of electric whine, if you ever heard that. So they're not as quiet as I might have thought going from a gasoline to an electric engine. So there is that as an option as well. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I think that was all I have for here. Y'all have a good one.